Have you ever heard of the heroic age of Antarctic exploration? It was a time, back in the late 19th century, when men of iron will faced off against the planet's harshest continent. This wasn't just about planting flags. It was about pushing the absolute limits of human endurance, an era of incredible bravery and devastating sacrifice. At the heart of this age was a man named Ernest Shackleton. Now, Shackleton was no stranger to the Antarctic. He'd been there before, but his previous expeditions were marked by what the world saw as failures. He had been beaten in the race to the South Pole by the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen. For many, that would have been the end. But for Shackleton, failure was just fuel for the fire. It forged in him an unbreakable resolve to achieve something even greater, to write his name into the history books for a feat no one had ever dared to attempt. So, in 1913, with the sting of past defeats still fresh, Shackleton unveiled his new, breathtakingly audacious plan, the first ever land crossing of the entire Antarctic continent. Imagine that a journey from sea to sea, right across the South Pole, through a vast, frozen, and completely unknown wilderness. It was a goal so ambitious, so dangerous, it was almost madness. But that's what made it irresistible. To pull off this monumental trek, Shackleton needed a very special kind of crew. He needed men who were not just sailors or scientists, but who were tough, resilient, and perhaps a little bit crazy. Legend has it that he placed an advertisement in the newspaper that was brutally honest. It supposedly reads something like, "Men wanted for a hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger. Safe return doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success." Can you believe that? And yet, thousands of men reportedly applied. From this pool of adventurers, Shackleton handpicked his crew, assembling a team of individuals known for their strength of character and their ability to endure the unimaginable. The vessel for this epic undertaking was as legendary as the mission itself. Her name was the Endurance. Built in Norway, she was a masterpiece of shipbuilding, a three-masted barkentine specifically designed to operate in the polar ice. Her hull was made from some of the strongest timbers available, reinforced to withstand the immense crushing pressure of the ice packs. She was, in every sense, built to endure. In August 1914, as the world was plunging into the chaos of the First World War, the Endurance set sail from Britain. It's said that Winston Churchill himself, then the First Lord of the Admiralty, gave them the go-ahead with a single word: proceed. With that, they departed, carrying not just supplies and sled dogs, but the hopes of a nation and an unyielding spirit of adventure. They were sailing toward the edge of the known world, heading for the Weddell Sea, one of the most treacherous, ice-choked bodies of water on Earth. They knew the risks. They knew the journey ahead would test them in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. But they were driven by that timeless human impulse to explore, to see what lies beyond the horizon. As the Endurance sailed south, her crew had no idea that they were not just embarking on a journey across a continent, but into one of the most incredible survival stories ever told. Their quest for glory was about to become a desperate fight for their very lives, a struggle that would immortalize the name Shackleton not for his triumph, but for his leadership in the face of absolute disaster. By January 1915, the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition faced its first true test of survival. Their vessel, the mighty Endurance, became hopelessly trapped in the dense pack ice of the Weddell Sea, just one day's sail from its destination. What they hoped would be a temporary delay soon turned into a 9-month nightmare. The ship, once a symbol of their ambition, was now an involuntary prison, drifting aimlessly with the frozen sea. To combat the crushing isolation and the perpetual Antarctic night, the crew established a routine. They transformed the cramped living quarters into a makeshift social club they ironically nicknamed the Ritz. Here, amidst the groaning timbers of the icebound ship, they found ways to keep their spirits up. They played cards, held sing-alongs accompanied by Leonard Hussey's banjo, and celebrated birthdays with whatever meager treats they could muster. Shackleton understood that maintaining morale was just as crucial as managing their physical supplies. He encouraged these moments of levity, knowing that mental fortitude would be their most valuable asset in the coming trials. They conducted scientific observations, hunted for seals and penguins to supplement their rations, and exercised the sled dogs on the ice, all while waiting for the spring thaw that they prayed would set them free. But spring brought no relief. Instead, the warming temperatures caused the vast ice floes to shift and grind against one another with terrifying force. The pressure began to build around the Endurance. The sounds were horrifying. Sharp cracks like pistol shots echoed across the ice, followed by the deep, agonizing groans of the ship's massive oak hull. The men watched helplessly as the immense pressure began to warp the very structure of their vessel. Beams splintered and the deck began to buckle. The ice was a slow, relentless serpent, coiling tighter and tighter, squeezing the life out of their ship. On October 27, 1915, the end came. With a final, deafening crunch, the sternpost was ripped away and icy water began pouring into the hold. The Endurance, their home and their last link to the outside world, was being crushed into splinters. Shackleton, his face grim, gathered his men on the distorted deck. He had to make the most devastating call of his career. "She's going, boys," he said, his voice heavy. "It's time to get off." The order was given: abandon ship. The crew scrambled to salvage what they could: 3 small lifeboats, sledges, tents, and essential supplies. They worked frantically, knowing that every item could mean the difference between life and death. On November 21st, they watched in somber silence as the remains of the Endurance, their proud vessel, finally slipped beneath the surface of the ice-choked water, swallowed by the freezing depths of the Weddell Sea. There they were, 28 men, stranded on a precarious drifting slab of ice in the most hostile environment on Earth. They were thousands of miles from the nearest outpost of civilization, with no ship, no radio, and no way to call for help. The world had no idea where they were or what had happened to them. They had only themselves, their dwindling supplies, and the unyielding leadership of Ernest Shackleton. Their journey for survival had just begun. Facing the vast white emptiness of Antarctica, they had to find a way to cheat death and get back home. After their ship, the Endurance, was crushed and swallowed by the ice, the 28 men of the expedition were left stranded on a vast, unforgiving expanse of frozen ocean. Their world was now a fragile, constantly shifting ice floe. This marked the beginning of a grueling new phase of survival. They set up a makeshift camp, which they grimly named Patience Camp, because patience was all they had left. The days bled into weeks, and the weeks into months. They drifted helplessly with the pack ice, watching their supplies dwindle with terrifying speed. Hunger became a constant, gnawing companion. The cold was relentless, seeping into their bones, and despair began to creep into the hearts of even the strongest men. Shackleton knew he had to maintain morale, but reality was brutal. The most heartbreaking decision came when they could no longer feed their faithful sled dogs, the loyal companions who had pulled their sledges across the ice. One by one, the animals had to be put down. It was a devastating blow for the crew, a sacrifice that underscored the true desperation of their situation. For many, it felt like losing the last vestiges of their former lives, a final severing of their connection to the world they once knew. They were truly alone, adrift at the bottom of the world. As the Antarctic summer waned, their floating refuge began to break apart. The ice groaned and split beneath their feet, the very ground they stood on disintegrating into the dark, turbulent waters of the Weddell Sea. By April 1916, their ice flow was no longer safe. The moment Shackleton had been dreading had arrived. He gave the order to abandon the ice and take to the sea in their 3 small lifeboats, the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, and the Stancomb Wills. These were little more than glorified rowboats about to face the most treacherous ocean on the planet. For 7 harrowing days and 7 sleepless nights, the men battled the ferocious Antarctic waters. The journey was a living nightmare. Colossal waves, some towering over 60 feet high, threatened to swamp their tiny vessels at any moment. They were lashed by constant, blinding blizzards. The spray from the sea froze instantly onto their clothes, encasing them in suits of icy armor that were as hard as iron. Their bodies were racked with shivering, their hands raw and bleeding from gripping the oars. Frostbite was a constant enemy, turning fingers and toes black. Sleep was impossible, a luxury they couldn't afford. Thirst was an even greater torment. They were surrounded by water, yet they were dying of dehydration, their tongues swelling in their dry mouths. Many of the men began to slip into delirium, their minds cracking under the immense strain of exhaustion, exposure, and hopelessness. They saw phantoms in the mist and heard voices in the howling wind. Through it all, Shackleton remained a pillar of strength, navigating by sheer instinct and celestial glimpses, shouting words of encouragement over the roar of the storm, refusing to let his men surrender to the abyss. Then, after an eternity of suffering, a miracle. Through a break in the swirling snow, they spotted land. It was Elephant Island, a desolate, wind-swept fortress of rock and ice, completely uninhabited and far from any shipping lanes. But to these men, it was paradise. After 497 days of living on unstable ice and battling the merciless sea, they finally felt solid ground beneath their feet. They stumbled ashore, collapsing onto the rocky beach, overwhelmed with relief. They had survived the impossible. They were alive. But their epic journey was far from over. The real test of leadership and endurance was just beginning. Stuck on a desolate ice-bound island with no hope of rescue, Ernest Shackleton faced a stark choice: stay and perish, or risk everything on an impossible journey. For him and his crew, the endurance was gone, but their spirit was not. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about keeping a promise. This is the story of one of the most daring rescue missions ever attempted. Shackleton knew their only chance lay 800 miles away, across the most treacherous ocean on the planet, the Drake Passage. The target was a tiny speck in the vast, stormy sea, the island of South Georgia. To get there, he chose 5 of his toughest men and a small, 22-foot lifeboat named the James Caird. Think about that. A small wooden boat, barely bigger than a large car, against monstrous waves and hurricane-force winds. Their journey would become a legend of the sea. For 17 days, they battled the fury of the Southern Ocean. Waves, some towering over 60 feet high, constantly threatened to swallow them whole. They were drenched in freezing seawater, their clothes frozen solid. Ice caked the boat, weighing it down, and they had to crawl onto the slippery deck to chip it away, risking being swept into the abyss with every movement. Sleep was a luxury they couldn't afford, grabbing only moments at a time. Their navigator, Frank Worsley, had the monumental task of guiding them using just a sextant. He could only take sightings of the sun when the churning, gray sky offered a rare, fleeting glimpse. One wrong calculation, and they would be lost forever in the endless expanse of the South Atlantic. It was a miracle of navigation and sheer willpower. Against all odds, they spotted the cliffs of South Georgia. But their ordeal was far from over. The savage weather threw them against the island's uninhabited southern coast, a place of jagged rocks and impassable cliffs. The whaling stations, their only hope for help, were on the other side. Sailing around the island was impossible. The battered James Caird would be smashed to pieces. Shackleton made another audacious decision. They would have to cross the island on foot. No one had ever done it. South Georgia's interior was an uncharted wilderness of towering, glacier-covered mountains and deep crevasses. Leaving 3 men with the boat, Shackleton, along with Frank Worsley and Tom Crean, began the final, desperate leg of their journey. They had no tents, no sleeping bags, and only a 50-foot length of rope. They screwed nails from their boat into their boots for makeshift crampons and set off. For 36 non-stop hours, they climbed icy peaks and navigated treacherous glaciers under the faint light of the moon. Exhausted and near their limit, they faced a steep, fog-shrouded cliff. With darkness falling, waiting meant freezing to death. Shackleton made a bold move. He told his men, "It's a devil of a risk, but we've got to take it." They coiled their rope, sat down together, and slid, toboggan style, thousands of feet down the icy slope into the unknown darkness below, praying they wouldn't plunge into a crevasse. Miraculously, they landed safely in a snowbank. Finally, stumbling with exhaustion, they heard a sound they hadn't heard in almost 2 years, a steam whistle from the Stromness whaling station. Filthy, gaunt, and with long, matted hair, they walked into the station, barely recognizable as human. The station manager, who knew them from their departure, was stunned into silence. Shackleton's first words were simple and direct. "My name is Shackleton. We have lost our ship and come over the island." The first part of the rescue was complete, but his mind was on one thing: the 22 men waiting on Elephant Island. What followed were 3 agonizing months of failed rescue attempts. Ship after ship was turned back by the impenetrable pack ice that guarded Elephant Island. But Shackleton refused to give up. He was relentless, securing a small Chilean tugboat, the Yelcho, for one last try. This time, timing was perfect. A break in the ice opened a narrow channel. As they steamed towards the island on August 30th, 1916, Shackleton scanned the shore. Through his binoculars, he saw a black tent, and then, one by one, figures emerging. He counted them anxiously. Every single one of the 22 men he had left behind was there, alive and waving. Shackleton had done it. He hadn't lost a single man from his expedition crew. His promise was fulfilled. The story of the Endurance is more than just a tale of survival. It's a powerful testament to leadership, unwavering optimism, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of impossible odds. Shackleton's journey reminds us that even when all seems lost, Courage and determination can lead us through the darkest of times. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of survival and leadership as inspiring as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories from history. See you next time.